municipal election headquarters. This is Politics Today with Jackie Kingston.
City of Amarillo breaking ground on the new City Hall building, when we could see that project begin in earnest. And the 30-day filing period for the City of Amarillo municipal election and other municipal elections has ended. We have more people who have filed to run. We'll check out the latest additions to the list. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here today. A lot's going on this week in preparation for Panhandle Days, which is happening in Austin next week. I will be there. We'll have a lot of our show recorded from Austin, which we'll bring to you then. But for this week, we'll start here. Amarillo's new City Hall is officially under construction. Politics Today's Jack Kessler has details from the groundbreaking and has a timeline of what we can expect.
After Tuesday's groundbreaking, the City of Amarillo will be wasting no time in starting on the new City Hall project. Jerry Danforth, facilities manager at the City of Amarillo, says that construction crews will be on location as early as this week. He says the project could be completed as soon as April of next year. Danforth adds the Amarillo Hardware building is twice the size of the current City Hall, leaving room to grow.
We're going to have between 50 and 60,000 square foot of additional space in this building that we won't build out, and we'll be able to either lease it or build in it as the city grows and has additional needs.
Mayor Ginger Nelson says the price tag to retrofit the current City Hall was going to be more expensive than rehabbing the Amarillo Hardware building.
I just like the financial investment of reusing a building that's here without tearing it down, without starting over from scratch. So not only have we kept a piece of history, but we've also saved our taxpayers a lot of money.
Not all members of the Amarillo City Council have been in favor of the new City Hall. Cole Stanley, council member Place 1, has opposed the move. This is what Stanley had to say regarding the groundbreaking, in which he did not attend.
Man, I wish him well. If I was given that center chair, I would be able to affect the City Hall project very little. Because it's kind of already passed and gone through, and I think that we're just going to need to make the most out of what we have there.
Mayor Nelson says it's important for the Amarillo City Council to be united in the future of Amarillo.
So it's fine for people to disagree on certain projects, but once the project has been approved by a majority of the council, then it's important to be behind. You can still ask questions about it, and so I don't know why we didn't have all the city council members here today, but I do. My personal opinion is that it is important for the council to be united as they move forward.
The Amarillo City Council first approved the purchase of 3 properties on Grant and Johnson back in November of 2020. In April 2022, they approved funding to demolish 3 warehouses at the location, and in June 2022, the warehouses were demolished. Now the site's ready to begin construction of the new City Hall building. The current City Hall can't be repurposed or reused without addressing ADA issues, plumbing issues, or lack of IT services. That's according to Mayor Nelson. Well, we all know by now that we record the show on Friday, and Friday, February 17th, is the filing deadline for the May municipal elections. So here is a look at the final slate of candidates as of Friday evening. Amarillo City Council member Place 2, Frida Powell, Tanya C. Winston, Jeffrey McGuneagle, Sam Burnett, Don Collins, and Amarillo City Council member Place 1, Cole Stanley, have all filed to run for mayor. We'll hear from him in just a moment. For Amarillo City Council Place 1, it's another crowded field. Margie Gonzalez, Ray White, Kelsey Richardson, Josh Kraft, Sherry Wood, Dean Crump, and Chip Hunt have all filed. In Place 2, Don Tips, Gabriel McHenry Herrera, and Misty Vigil all filed. For Place 3, it's Tom Sherlin, Kat Massey, and John Adair. In Place 4, it's Hobart Gunny Brown, Les Simpson, John Ingerson, and Claudette Smith, who all filed by the deadline. As we just mentioned, City Council member Place 1 Cole Stanley announced his intention to run for Amarillo Mayor. Stanley made that announcement at the Big Texan restaurant. He was first elected to the City Council back in 2021.
The easiest thing for me to stand on and differentiate myself in my form of leadership is I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to turn things upside down. I'm not afraid to start over. And quite frankly, there's some things in our city that have just been kind of cooked up for a long time, and ultimately we need to remodel a few things. We need to tear a few things down and look at them, make some changes, and I'm not afraid to make those changes.
The deadline to register to vote in the May 6th election is coming up in the first week of April, so you still have time to register now. Other news from City Hall this week: Amarillo will have a new City Marshal's office. That office was unanimously approved by the City Council last week. The office will enforce certain health and safety, building safety regulations as well.
We should be a little more proactive instead of reactive to everything. Right now, when we get a phone call, it's from a citizen saying that there's a problem, and everything we do is reactive. If we can be proactive, I see it helping the city be a cleaner city, safer city.
This expands existing city positions. 2 weekend protests in downtown Amarillo last weekend, responding to a lawsuit filed on November 18, 2022. In an order filed on February 9th, federal judge Matthew J. Kazmierek ruled the replies surrounding the preliminary injunction motion, which asked the court to rule on the FDA whether it should withdraw or suspend its approval of a drug, an abortion-causing drug, and ultimately take it off the market as the lawsuit continues. Those replies can be made through February 24th. The briefing will then be closed. The Women's March protest and the Stand for Life protest voicing their stance on that lawsuit.
What I want to do is, one, to again bring that awareness, because in a place like Amarillo, some of these lawsuits can go under the radar and we won't know that they're happening until they reach the Supreme Court. And we want to make sure that people are paying attention, that we have our eyes on the ball in all the places where abortion is under threat.
It's really a picture of worlds colliding, which is a good representation of this case. This is a case where there are some in America that want abortion access and some in America that are against abortion access.
Dixon and Middleton both say each protest witnessed people of all ages and backgrounds coming out to make their voices heard. Protesters from New Mexico and Colorado also participated in those marches. We have much more about that lawsuit on our website right now, myhighplains.com. On Thursday, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice said death row inmate Hank Skinner died at a hospital in Galveston. 60-year-old Skinner was scheduled to be executed September 13th. That's according to TDCJ. Skinner was in custody for more than 27 years after being convicted of a December 1993 triple murder in Pampa. Hank Skinner's attorneys say he died from complications following surgery in December to remove a brain tumor. He was still incarcerated at the time of his death. TDCJ says Skinner killed 3 people on December 31st, 1993 at a home in Pampa. Officials said Twyla Busby, Skinner's girlfriend, was choked and struck multiple times in the head with a wooden axe handle. And Randolph Busby and Elwyn Kaler, who were identified as Twyla Busby's adult sons, were stabbed with a kitchen knife. According to our previous reporting, Skinner lived with those 3 people. He was sentenced to death back in 1995. Skinner's attorneys released a statement saying, quote, "Mr. Skinner always staunchly maintained his innocence of any crime." They go on to say, "Mr. Skinner was still challenging his convictions at the time of his death, and we are deeply sorry he passed away before those proceedings were complete." TDCJ says Skinner had a significant medical event on Monday and had been receiving medical care since that time. Skinner appealed multiple times through the judicial process. More about him and his case also on our website right now. Texas Governor Greg Abbott gave his State of the State address on Thursday night. Coming up, we're getting a look at what he's prioritizing during the 88th legislative session. I'm Jackie Kingston. You're watching Politics Today from your local election headquarters. Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced 7 emergency items for the Texas legislature last week. It's now up to lawmakers to decide how or whether to act on those items. Capitol correspondent Ryan Chandler was there. He joins us now with this report.
Well, the course of this legislative session is beginning to take shape as Governor Abbott announces his directions to the legislature at the State of the State. But unlike the State of the Union, this speech is not merely aspirational, but gives specific guidelines about policy areas that lawmakers can begin work on immediately. The governor identified 7 emergency items, including cutting property taxes, ending local COVID mask and vaccine mandates, ensuring security in schools and on the border, and addressing rising fentanyl overdoses. What will undoubtedly be one of the most controversial emergency items, though, is an unequivocal call to create education savings accounts to subsidize private school tuition. Here's a look at that debate.
I am making education freedom an emergency item this session.
Governor Greg Abbott outlining new specific plans for an emergency item he calls education freedom.
School choice through state-funded education savings accounts.
ESAs pave the way for the state to contribute to savings accounts that would subsidize private education. The governor argues it will give more options to families dissatisfied with their public schools, but
if vouchers are his dream, well, then the Democratic caucus will be his nightmare.
It faces an uphill climb. Last session, 115 House members voted against dedicating any money to such a plan, Democrats and Republicans.
What we're talking about here is defunding schools and taking money out of public schools and giving them to private schools.
The governor, however, promises that won't be an issue.
To be perfectly clear, under this school choice program, all public schools will be fully funded for every student.
More to come on that as the legislature continues. Democrats giving their rebuttal to the state of the state right after the governor stopped speaking. They chose to mostly let the people of Texas speak for them in their response, which included various interviews from their constituents. Here's what some of the state's Democrats had to say about the legislative session.
Our challenges ahead of us this legislative session. We're not going to lie to you and say the fight will be easy.
But we can promise you, Democrats are going to fight because you, the people of Texas, deserve the opportunity to succeed, no matter your race, life background, or where in this great state you call home.
Ahead of Thursday's State of the State address by Governor Abbott, Politics Today's Capitol correspondent Monica Madden sat down with Speaker of the House Dade Phelan to discuss his priorities and topics already taking shape in the session.
Ask you about the Robb Elementary mass school shooting in Uvalde. You made a point to bring that up during your opening day speech as well, saying that there is meaningful and sensible changes that the legislature can make. What does meaningful and sensible changes mean to you?
Well, schools safety is something that as a parent myself, is something that's the forefront of everyone's mind. But the families, when I went and met with them in January, they talk about mental health issues, especially with today's youth.
Do you see any of the gun restrictions that they're calling for, specifically age limit, as something that's possible in Texas?
And I don't think the votes are there in the House and the Senate to raise the age, but there are other meaningful things we can do that could certainly improve school safety and improve the mental health of our children.
What do you say to folks who might say that the efforts Texas is doing through Operation Lone Star aren't stemming the flow of migrants we're seeing crossing the border?
I think we're going to have the opportunity to test those federal laws very soon.
Your Public Education Committee, you appointed several members who have been opposed to school vouchers in the past. Are school vouchers dead upon arrival in the House?
No, not at all. There's going to be a very meaningful discussion on school vouchers. If you ask 149 House members out there on the floor what school choice means to them, you're going to get 149 different responses.
State lawmakers are also pushing for more legislation to prevent gun-related tragedies. Coming up, we're learning more about the roadblocks that legislation is facing. A group of Texas Democratic senators say it's time to do more to prevent gun-related tragedies. But as Politics Today's Monica Madden reports, any proposals that would restrict gun usage will face an uphill battle from Texas Republicans.
It's very hard to be here nearly 5 years later.
Nearly 5 years after the Santa Fe, Texas school shooting, and on the 5th anniversary of the Parkland, Florida school shooting.
We still await justice. Santa Fe still awaits justice. Parkland still awaits justice.
Painful anniversaries for the families of the victims.
They promised us Uvalde would not happen. They said they had fixed the problems. And when Uvalde happened, it broke us.
Reigniting their calls for change in hopes other families don't have to experience their pain.
No one is immune to a bullet. Nobody should endure the life-altering grief of losing a family member to gun violence.
It's why Senator Sen Gutierrez and other Democrats say it's time to change Texas's gun laws.
It's important that the Republicans in this building understand that we have to do something to make it harder for this to happen.
But what they call common sense is up for debate by many Republicans.
We'll have a robust discussion on the intersection between safety and dialing back Second Amendment rights. Just want to make sure that we don't dial back the rights of everyday Texans.
Families hoping lawmakers do something to ensure others in the years to come don't have to know their pain.
And it's just ridiculous to me that I'm standing here yet again asking for your help to save the next kid's life because you can't save mine.
Senator Gutierrez and other lawmakers have introduced several other Uvalde-related bills. You can read all about them on myhighplains.com. Cancer research in Texas getting a big funding boost. Wednesday, the committee overseeing the state's Cancer Institute, known as CPRIT, approved $90 million in new grants to go toward research and prevention efforts across the state. Those grants will fund 40 different projects at major research hubs in the state, from Houston to El Paso and Dallas to the Rio Grande Valley. According to CPRIT, the RGV has the nation's highest cancer incidence and death rate, so some of those grants will be dedicated to analyzing those health disparities and finding better treatment.
How can we equitably, in a fair manner, distribute cancer care across the state of Texas?
Patel says for the RGV, the grants will help bolster building infrastructure so Texans in that area have access to higher quality care. The Crossbar Ranch could soon become a recreational park for the public. Coming up next, a look at the journey so far. The Crossbar Special Recreation Management Area is just 15 miles northwest of Amarillo. Politics Today's Jack Kessler has more on how those in our community are working to open the land for recreation.
The Crossbar Special Recreation Management Area is a hidden gem here on the High Plains. And according to the Friends of the Crossbar, it is becoming increasingly popular with outdoor enthusiasts.
The Crossbar is 12,000 acres, and right now we have 16 miles of trail built. The Friends of Crossbar works with the BLM in order to have open trails days. The trails are open for hiking, biking, horseback riding. There's bird watching groups that go out there. I know Texas A&M and Texas Tech do studies out there.
But there is one problem. The property is landlocked by private property, and the only current access is via traversing the Canadian River by acquiring a recreation pass through the BLM or during open trail days. The Bureau of Land Management has invested $500,000 for a master plan to develop the Crossbar into a recreation area. Lori Vinegar-Bill, executive director of the Friends of the Crossbar, says it's a slow process to get the Crossbar fully open, but they're on their way.
The FLAP grant is, right now they've estimated it's going to be over $5 million. With the application, we said that we would match almost 30%. So of the $5 million, 30% of that we're going to need to match, which ends up being $1.4 million. Our first goal is $27,000, which will be the match for the $90,000 in order to develop the project plan. Now what we'll wait for is for TxDOT to come in and survey the land, find out how much and how long and how hard it will be to build the road. We'll know all this in the fall.
After the 2.5-mile road is built that connects the Crossbar to Highway 287, the wildlife habitat will offer several different amenities, such as over 100 camping spots and nearly 40 miles of trails.
Over the years, we've heard a lot from the public and their desires for their land. to be opened up to them, to have better access for, you know, all the activities like mountain biking and horseback riding and hiking and camping and hunting.
Adrian Escobar, outdoor recreation planner for the Crossbar, says the economic impact will be great after Crossbar becomes fully accessible.
In 2018, Texas A&M did a feasibility study that was supported by the city of Amarillo, and what we learned from there is we could expect, as the property evolves and is open, you know, upwards of 250,000 visitors per year, with a significant economic impact to the region.
In Amarillo, Jack Kessler, KAMR Local 4 News.
You can check out the Crossbar for yourself. They're hosting a trail day on March 4th. Stay tuned. We'll wrap things up right after this. All right, everybody, that does it for us this morning here on Politics Today. You can stay up with us, all the political news throughout the week, over on our website, myhighplains.com. Check us out on social media as well. myhighplains.com, where you'll find all the listings of people who filed for the municipal election here in our area, including Amarillo ISD, CISD, their Board of Trustees, and the slate of candidates for the Canyon municipal election for their city council. All of that there for you. And don't forget, special coverage coming up this week from Austin as Panhandle Days commences. We'll have more coverage as well next week. See you then.